Hey everyone, welcome back to another week's episode of Three Simple Men making their way through the galaxy. You know us, you love us. I'm Tom, with me is Ryan and Mike, and today we're still in the Clone Wars. We're still in Season 1, Episode 10, titled Lair of Grievous. First of all, fellas, how are we doing? And then the second question, what do we think of the episode?
Doing good, as always. Always good when we're watching Star Wars. I feel like I always start off by saying it's a great episode, and yet again, we got another one here with some little twists, little turns, some fun action. Let me just read the quote right off the bat, just to get that over with. I have a better quote that I wrote down, but the episode starts off with, "Most powerful is he who controls his own power." So with that, we go into the episode. Mike?
Yeah, I'm doing good, and definitely a change of pace from what we saw from last week's episode. Or I guess this is episode 3 of a mini trilogy here, with the whole new Gunray being captured, being rescued, and now the Jedi are on the hunt for him. So yeah, it's definitely a nice change of pace, and definitely the star of this episode is General Grievous, and we get to see more of his origin story. So very excited to talk about this one with you fellas.
Absolutely. I think the best way we could start off is we're now introduced to a new Jedi who we've seen before in Attack of the Clones movie, Master Kit Fisto.
Yes. Awesome to get a little more Kit Fisto because, I mean, at least for me, he was always an interesting Jedi early on, right? Not watching Clone Wars, but just watching the films and seeing him, I'm not sure, I didn't do the research. I'm not sure what like species he is, but I want to say it's kind of the first, unless he's kind of like the same species as, I don't know. He's not like the same as Jabba's assistant guy, whose name.
Bib Fortuna.
No, he's not. He's not Bib Fortuna.
And he's not a Twilk, but I'm just trying to think like the first time we see him in Clone Wars. I distinctly remember like, oh, this is because he's also the one who force pushes C3PO and he's on the head. Like, so you see him as a kid, right? We get introduced to him, but he doesn't really have any lines. And we don't really get to meet him as a character. He's just kind of a cool costume at that point, right? For lack of a better term, but that's literally all he is. And then we get more of him finally in this, because before this, we do see him in Revenge of the Sith, right? We're going to see him in the next film too. And again, for me, it was always like he was kind of a character that stood out as like, oh, this is kind of a cool looking alien. He kind of reminded me of the
baby from Men in Black.
Yes. Come here. I mean,
I was about to say it, bro.
Yeah.
It's like when Will Smith is getting dragged up and down the air, and I was like, he looked like the baby alien from Men in Black.
And that's what like I remember thinking as a kid too, is like, oh, it's like this is this same alien species. Like, what is it? Who do we do? And it's fun to now get to the Clone Wars and this kind of animated offshoot of what we might refer to as traditional Star Wars films, and they get to expand on characters like this, which is so much fun, and I love that we get to do it. But yeah, 100% Will Smith birthed a Kit Fisto species.
But we're also introduced.
Already established that ET's race and species has made it to Earth and existed, so why hasn't we could also probably establish that Kit Fisto species has also made it to Earth, and Will Smith delivered a baby version of Kit Fisto.
We should just do one episode of just us and our conspiracy theories of how entangled all the movies are going to be tied in with Star Wars and shit like that.
I think we're there right now. E.T. and Men in Black are canon.
There we go.
We're expanding. It's going to get bigger. But more importantly, we now learn that before he was a master, he also had an apprentice.
Yes. Yep. Which the apprentice named Nadar Veb, who, and I want to talk about this because I think this is really where we can kind of really go with this episode. very early on, he reunites with with Nadarveb. They have the intel that Newt Gunray is at this location, so they're going after him. But we very quickly learn from Kit when he is reunited with his old apprentice. He says something along the lines, I didn't write it down, but oh no, I did write it down. He said the war prevented him from seeing his training through to the end, and he's sorry for that, but he's happy that he's a Jedi Knight now, which is something we kind of touched upon a little bit with Ahsoka and her upbringing. And I think this is just another thing making it very clear that these current Jedi are not, they're not the Jedi they're supposed to be. They're forced into this terrible war, and it's changing how they're brought up and changing how they're being trained, because traditionally Kit would have been with him the entire time. He would have been there to train him, but unfortunately, because of the way the war is working, he couldn't. And I think the result of that becomes pretty apparent throughout this episode. So I'll pitch it on over to one of you to kind of go in that route.
I think when it comes to the training, and what we're going to see later on in this episode with his apprentice, is the third and final stage that we'll also see with Anakin and a few others, is pretty much what they would describe facing the man in the mirror, about how they carry themselves as Jedi. Like, are you going to be easily swayed, because like you said, this is war? Are you going to be easily swayed into vengeance, or to just show strength instead of following the Jedi path to the truest form? And it leads everything into debate whether they're going to fulfill being a Jedi Knight, or can they be easily corrupted?
Yeah. No, and I think we sadly we see how that turns out for Nadar Veb.
Yeah, I think it just like builds up, because I think like the first instance of like him, like just the whole with the way going into the lair, it's like, oh hey, we're good with explosives. So you got the clone trooper is like, oh yeah, let me just use my lightsaber and just do that. It's like, no, it's like, let's just have a second look here. And he found the right switch and opened up. So I mean, they didn't know what they were walking into. And yeah, you just kind of, as this episode goes on, I think you're going to see like the consequences of not being formally trained in the Jedi arts, and you guys pretty much touched on that perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, he gives major Anakin vibes, right? Just rushing in. Even says at one point, which, crying shame, I'm putting this out here right now. This upset me more than anything. So we didn't mention it, but I believe this is the first time chronologically that we've been introduced to a member of the Mon Calamari species, which is fantastic. Our Mon Calamari, our OG Mon, right there. But they show up, they're there, they realize that it's not the new Gunray's not there, and that it is in fact a trap. And the one Mon Calamari in the episode doesn't say it's a trap. Instead, we get a clone that says, this has got to be a trap. And I was like, of all the fan service you've given us,
yeah,
about this, you're not going to have the one Mon Calamari say, it's a trap. That's all I wanted. And we didn't get it.
Well, we'll talk about that later, because there's one scene in particular in this episode. I didn't hear one quote. Like, we'll hear in the third episode that I'm feeling disappointed. But no, going forward with this episode, we see him go into the lair of General Grievous. I don't know if you guys saw the way it was set up. It was giving me major Harry Potter vibes of the Order of the Phoenix, where they're trying to find something to help defeat
the Department of Mysteries, like,
yes.
Yeah. I mean, it was just, yeah, I mean, it's something that you would expect with a lair. I mean, you got all these like different doors and all these different traps we'll see throughout, but yeah, it's just very dark, very eerie. They had no idea what they're walking into. Like, scanners were negative. Hear a shriek from a beast, and they're like, "Yep, something bad, or something bad's here." So
And
had
then
no idea.
statues too.
I was
Like
gonna say, I'm not crazy, right? Grievous had a bunch of statues of himself in his own lair.
pretty much
Yeah.
what his species was before he became a cyborg. He was a
Yes.
warrior alien species.
Telling his
He was like a warrior because you could see like him holding up the knives or whatever weapons were unique to their kind. Yeah, I think there were like three or four of them, three or four statues of just Grievous. You can just tell with the face and everything. You just see the warrior that he was in the flesh before he became the droid cyborg. That's quite the Jedi killer.
and doesn't like droids. Also,
No,
like
No, he's destroyed a few himself, to be honest.
and he even complains, right? We finally he interacts with Dooku, who very quickly lets us know that like he's setting up. It's pretty obvious. He's like setting up this test, right? We'll call it that, where he's testing Grievous to see if he still has it in him by basically setting a trap for Grievous by bringing these, well, one Jedi Master, one Jedi Knight, and a few clones to try to fight him. So I found that kind of interesting. It was like the first, like, kind of real testing and kind of, I guess, seeing the inner politics of the separatists in a sense, right? Like Dooku at least is blaming all the failures on Grievous, so he's testing him for Sidious. I don't know. I just kind of thought that was interesting.
One of those quotes I think right now with between Grievous and Dooku is like Dooku is more Grievous should more approach it like he's just getting out of the frying pan and getting sent straight to the fire because of all the failures. And there's a difference between him and Asajj Ventress Phelan is she's more a dark assassin. General Grievous is the leader of the droid army next to Count Dooku. He is a key figurehead in the Separatist army. So this is a different test for him because this is more of if you can't think of it like in history without like whether it was Stalin back in World War II, we're bringing back at World War II, or even the Germans. It's like the failure, you get rid of your general and you get a next one who's going to succeed. If you don't have him, if he doesn't succeed, he's gone too. And it's more about putting the pressure on him. Like, can you get the job done? Are you the guy?
Yeah.
yeah. Then
Yeah, it was absolutely a test.
The Jedi thinking too is just like, oh, is this a trap for us, or who's this trap really for? And then obviously when they think they have Newt Gunray, somehow they were able to get the tracking beacon onto that chair, and they're like, and like you can tell after they dispatched the droids, like, oh yeah, we should have seen that coming because Newt Gunray being the coward that he was, he would have ran away versus staying around. But I think this is also another instance where we see Nadar like getting carried away with everything because I think at one point he slices up the droid and he's ready to like use the force to either fling it or something. He's like, didn't I teach you to use restraint? And you just see that like probably like another instance of that disconnect and unfortunate consequence of not being fully trained.
Yeah,
Term we're looking for
warrior,
battle
not
rage.
a guardian, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but like I said, battle rage. That's what it is, and we're going to see more of that.
Mm-hmm.
I will step on Mike's toes. I'll ask first.
Oh boy!
Do you have any deep dives?
No, go right ahead. Take it away.
Okay, so I couldn't help but kind of feel like I recognized the voice of Kit Fisto. So I did a little quick research to see who was voicing him.
Phil Lamar.
So yes, it is Phil Lamar, who is like a legendary voice actor. He's pretty much, if you've watched it and somebody's voice, he's probably done a voice in an episode of something you've watched. But I wanted to point out that he has voiced characters in both Knights of the Old Republic 1 and Knights of the Old Republic 2.
Ooh.
And he was also on in Pulp Fiction. So just some fun things there that I caught a quick glimpse of.
Hold on a second. we got to bring up one thing he's done now.
Go for it, because I don't think I caught everything.
Near and dear to my heart, Cartoon Network's Samurai Jack.
There you go. That's true. I saw that was on there, and that's what I was saying. It's like so many voices, and then that made me think, oh well, who are the other actors here? And another legendary voice actor is voicing both Nadar Veb in this episode and Newt Gunray, and that is none other than Tom Kenny,
Ooh.
who is voiced probably most famously SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun with the voice actors, and we don't give them enough credit, and we really should, because it's such a
And
deal.
speaking of voice actors, I'm trying to look this up to see if this man actually voiced, because we get introduced to Grievous's medical droid.
So I did write down his name, EVA4D. I did not write down the name of the guy who voiced him, but I did look into him, and I should have written down the name. I'm sorry. But he's voiced a lot of droids. It looks like he's more primarily a sound technician.
Ooh.
Who has worked on a lot of Star Wars films, and then they also have him voice droids. Mostly uncredited.
Wow.
Let me see if I can pull up his name. I feel bad that we're not saying his name. But for a second, I thought it was John Mulaney.
That's,
right? That's who I thought it sounded like.
I thought it was John Mulaney, to be honest.
I may or may not have just watched Into the Spider-Verse on an airplane, and John Mulaney voices.
Dude, I was watching some of his stand-up work the other night. I was like,
So the voice of EV4 A4D is in fact David Accord, who is his primary credits are within as a sound designer. So the guy is like an audio with everything: Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Guardians of the Galaxy, Andor. So he's worked anything Star Wars. It looks like he's
cooking. The guy's a worker.
Disney, Loki, all those. So it looks like he probably is just a big Lucas films guy. Their audio design, what's their audio team? THX, right?
Yeah,
something like that.
But yeah, so he's been on all the movies, all the video games, the Lego ones, everything as a sound designer. But it looks like they had a little fun, and they let him come in and voice this medical droid, EVA4D. So that was kind of fun too. But yeah, it sounded like John Mulaney. I'm right there with you, Tom.
I was looking that up. I was like, was it John Mulaney? Was it not? But the droid itself, we'll see another version like that later on in episode 6, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, and I think with this one, he's a little bit of a wise guy, and like mocking Grievous, like, oh, like you're a better fighter than this.
And once again, that's why I thought it was John Mulaney, because of the comedic relief that his pain is the droid's pleasure in a sense.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Making fun of him, and then Grievous thinking like, oh, you're the one who cut off my bodyguards. The fact that they let Jedi in, like, no, it wasn't me. I thought it was you. And well, we find out eventually that none other than Count Dooku. So, so Grievous is finally back in his control room, and he's ready to deploy some traps and extend his hospitality to the Jedi. So we see it's like a hot floor or whatever it was, because we had one of the clones incinerated and the other was saved. And then Grievous has a pet. I don't know what it is, like a pet Gundark, maybe. Like
I was thinking it was a Gundark. Yeah, but you know what was funny about that thing? Yeah. You know what it reminded me of? One of the Covenants from the Halo video games. The way it looked with the helmet on. You know, the one that goes whoa, 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 whoa.
The Elite or the Hunter?
The Elite. No. It wasn't the Jackals. It wasn't the Grunts. It might have been the Elite.
I'd say it a little bit.
An oversized one, yeah.
Yeah, the ones that usually carried the sword, too.
Yeah, that's the Elite. Yep.
Yeah, it's been a while since I played Halo, which, looking at my Xbox, Halo might be tonight.
No.
Anyways, yeah, like you said, he's setting up traps.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we see clones getting picked off one by one, and I think it also too late, when they're trying to like um, tie him down with the cables, he gets away. Then if, I think at one point, like Kit Fisto and Nadar Vev are split from each other, and you have Nadar checking the bodies, and he's like, "Oh, I could have taken Grievous on myself. The clones were in my way." So again, you see that battle rage really getting to him. He's like, and Kit Fisto's like, "No, we should retreat. We should tend to the wounded." So you definitely see the contrast between the two of how they're going about it. And yeah, I think this is the first time we've ever seen General Grievous getting repaired in the process, because we see, I think when the Jedi go in, they see like this whole room of like spare helmets, spare legs, spare everything. But then you see the droid doing the repairs, and now you see like him like chopping out the legs, like, oh, this is going to be painful. And when, especially the part when the mask is coming off, because I don't think, other than the statues, we've never saw the face of General Grievous. So I can't imagine what that was like. Um, Very much getting a whole new body.
But can we wind it back for a second? I think we're missing a few key details about General Grievous that we know. Well, first of all, we saw he has like a room for his trophies.
Yes.
We see a lightsaber, we see Jedi Padawan braids.
Yeah, that was new and pretty creepy, right? We knew he was collecting lightsabers, but the fact that he's stealing or cutting off Padawan braids, basically scalping them, is
Yep.
pretty terrifying.
Then during that battle, we finally get to see General Grievous do something since we haven't seen since we watched episode 3. Whenever on our free time, the man pulls out 4 lightsabers for the first time.
You're right.
Yeah.
Catch that at first, but
Even that one time when he was fighting Obi-Wan and the Malevolence, he only had 2.
Yep.
Nice catch.
Yes.
So with that, who wants to get to the sad part of the episode?
All right. Well, they managed to kill Gore, which really enrages Grievous, and then he realizes oh, wait a minute, Count Dooku set this up for me, and he's going full rager. He has the Magna Guards deployed, and he's on the hunt now that he wants to prove himself and pretty much regain his honor with the way Dooku was berating him. So you see them going down the hall. Then you got the droid watching in the control room, like, oh, the Jedi are right behind you, right behind you. They're coming to the control room, and again, you see that Kit Nadar like going like, this is my chance. I want to take him. We can end this war. And Kit Fisto was like, no, let's go. And unfortunately, the trap door closes, and we see very quickly how Nadar dispatches the Magna Guards. And he tries to take on Grievous, but if there's one thing we know about Grievous, he'll never fight fairly. So, yes, he did have 2 lightsabers, but unfortunately, he secretly divided one of his arms and pulled out a blaster and shot him to death. So,
Yeah.
R.I.P. Nadar Veb.
We had you for one episode. We fell in love with you, and then we lost you. But I think it's a stark moment, or I'm lost for words. I'm so sad. But it really shows us that these Jedi are just not training properly. They're, war is changing things, and it's going to bring us right to my quote that I actually wanted to point out, and it was right at the end of the episode. Yoda says, "In this war, a danger there is of losing who we are." And I think on a small scale, the individual of just any Jedi, fog of war, just losing who they are as an individual, but also as a greater statement of all the Jedi. Yoda's not just talking about the individual, he's talking about everyone. And with this war, it seems like they are in fact losing who they are, because the Jedi are, like, the order is failing here. They've already cut corners, right, for lack of a better term, and they're failing. and they're failing these young Jedi and these young Force sensitive people that they're pulling in because they're not going through the proper training, and because of that they're becoming something else. And we'll find out how drastic that actually becomes with our OG child of war, Anakin Skywalker.
And this is going to be a big issue for them too, because at some point later down the road, if it's going to keep being like this, where you're cutting corners, you're doing all this, and you're just putting these young Force sensitive kids as Jedi Padawans and making them knights that fast, it will be politicized soon to the point where the people of the Republic are like going to be very skeptical. They're worrisome. Like, are we actually having good quality Jedi as generals now at this point instead of keepers of the peace? And now you have a young kid who's very inexperienced still leading clone troopers. People are going to start second guessing, like, are we winning the war? Are we not doing that well? What is going on? That's going to be, in my theory, that it's going to be a bad, negative, politicized effect for not just the Jedi, but the Republic itself.
Mm-hmm. And then I'll just also say too, I'll hand it to Kit Fisto for holding his own against Grievous, because you see that deploying all 4 lightsabers and fighting him single-handedly too, and just like seeing the way like Kit Fisto fight, like he's the Jedi Master for a reason. He's got the experience. He knows when to fight, know when to retreat, and the fact that he was using his surroundings to his advantage, like hiding in the fog, throwing them off, and even disarmed him at one point. So I'd say so far, like we've seen one Jedi being able to hold his ground, and he does get away. And then Dooku's thinking, "Oh, congratulations! He expected you to kill clones, the Padawan, but killing a Jedi Master is impressive." It's like, well, he got away, and then it's like, yeah, there's room for improvement. Just cuts off the comms. So I don't know. I mean, did Grievous really regain his honor there, or
I'm gonna come up with a bold sorry, Tom, maybe a hot take.
yeah,
But I just thought of this. Grievous, we've watched him continuously fail, right? He hasn't been successful. And we know him as this guy who adds lightsabers to his collection. And we could think, oh, he's a crazy Jedi killer. But now looking back at earlier in this episode, yeah, we know he collects lightsabers, but how many braids did he have? He had like 6.
At least 5, I think.
Yeah.
Like, so wouldn't that imply that he got a lot of his lightsabers from killing untrained Jedi Padawans, right?
Dooku even expressed that. It's like killing a young, inexperienced Jedi is one thing. Killing a master is a completely different thing. If you can kill a Jedi Master, if you manage to kill Kit Fisto, that's an accomplishment worth recognizing from Dooku's perspective of, you regain my trust.
Yeah. I guess what I take is Grievous only kills young Padawans. He's not very skillful. He's not that much of a badass as he likes to pretend to be because he collects lightsabers. He's going after young Padawans. I mean,
are we just saying Grievous is a child predator at this point?
I'm just saying. I mean, right? We haven't seen him defeat any true Jedi. This is the first time we've actually seen him kill a Jedi, right?
Yeah, we've only.
I mean,
right? We saw another Jedi die, but that was I'm gonna die, right?
Yeah,
he didn't get killed by Grievous. He got killed by
the honorable way
clones. But yeah, I think the lore of Grievous is this like that, because again, we haven't gotten to where we were initially introduced to him, right? We originally met him in Revenge of the Sith as viewers, because that was his first appearance, right?
I was going to throw it back to that original Clone Wars series from 2002, because that was like the season 1 finale, like getting introduction to Grievous, and he's taking on not one, but I believe like 3 or 4 Jedi Masters.
Yeah,
just like he's incredibly nerfed from his first appearance. way back when compared to now. Yeah, it definitely gives more narrative, more context, but like, I'll have to admit, the first time, like, really getting introduced to Grievous, just like, holy crap, and just like the way he held his ground, he like bested Shakti, Aayla Secura, Kiadi Mundi, and maybe one or two other famous Jedi Masters out there, and like, he couldn't
Don't
be
forget
touched.
my
Like,
boy
See,
Shaggy.
but that's in the
Shaggy,
non-canon
I know, but that was the
episode.
first,
So that's the first I haven't seen it. I haven't watched it.
those 3 minute
Yeah,
episodes. Like,
I haven't watched it, so
ooh.
I don't know what you're talking about. My first introduction to Grievous was Hello There, General Kenobi. That's the first time I met him, and we see that he can fight, but that's it. And we learn that he collected, and we'll get into it and stuff too. But that was kind of my first experience. But maybe I don't know. Should we do an episode where we watch those little short Clone Wars and add that to this, or no? I don't know.
It's not canonical at this point, so I guess we got to keep going because I feel like they jumped around so many different points too. It's hard with the different Clone Wars timelines. I guess maybe we'll just do it as a bonus thing for the fan.
Maybe we'll have to watch it eventually. Maybe we'll watch it after we finish Clone Wars.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like a fun thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess my hot take is that Grievous is a chump who preys on the weak, takes out young Padawans, and hasn't really earned any of the lightsabers he has.
I think that's probably the best hot take.
Yeah. Ryan jumping all over the board. Like,
Everything.
Honestly,
This episode got me all tingly inside.
my only hot take was Kit Fisto could have saved the clones and his Padawan once they fell into because how many times have we seen them use the Force and they just hold them in air?
Yeah. Good point.
But I think your hot take was much better because that is very, very should be looked at now at this point.
Yeah, we'll have to keep watching and see if Grievous, as watching it as Dooku, putting ourselves in it, is Grievous really worth all the hype, And I'm a big fan of calling out characters that aren't worth the hype, which we'll get to eventually.
we did rail on Obi-Wan a few weeks ago, so
Oh, I didn't say he didn't live up to his hype. I just said he doesn't like.
He was just on. He was just on the show. That's all.
Calling them out for who they are. Yep. And then I hope we got another tally for. I have a bad feeling about this because I think that
I caught it. I wrote it down. You're right. This was number. Let's see. This was the 8th time it's been referenced, and this time it was by the late Jedi Knight, Nadar Veb. So very good.
R.I.P.
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 All right. With that,
I'm all set.
Take it away, Mike.
It's a wrap. Thank you, everyone, for joining 3 Simple Men making their way through the galaxy. Hit that like, comment, subscribe, and come back next week for some more Clone Wars content. May the Force be with you, always.